So imagine that you're yourself. You began the day thinking that nothing was going to hold you back. There was plenty of time to get everything done. You were going to finally read that book that you've been putting off forever, get some exercise, and actually get ahead on your work so that at the end of the day, you'll really be able to relax because you'll know that you've really earned it. At least that was the plan, because today it hasn't really worked out like that. From the moment you got out of bed, everything just felt harder than it should. Try to read a book and it seems so much more boring than you ever thought it would. Try to do something active, well actually you're kinda tired right now, maybe later. And forget about getting ahead on your work, because today you seem to have the attention span of a goldfish with 20 new notifications on his phone. Even doing the bare minimum is going to take everything you've got. It's like you've got this invisible force working against you whenever you try to direct your will towards something, making it so that you don't even want to do those things anymore. And the more time that passes, the stronger this feeling of internal resistance becomes, because it gets reinforced with feelings of guilt. You know you should have done more by now, but feeling like this makes it even harder to get started. After a while, you can't even bear to look at the thing you planned on doing. So instead, you look at your phone, your computer, or your TV. And if you get sick of that, then you can stare out of a window or at the ceiling. Eventually, you stop even wanting the day to go the way you envisioned and start just wanting the day to end, so you can try to forget all about what's happened to it. This is what happens when we get stuck in a negative feedback loop. At first, it was probably just some small thing that was slightly off, like feeling a bit tired because you got 30 minutes less sleep than you needed. But this can still be enough to send any of us spiraling through a cycle of inaction and negative thoughts. And hopefully this video will help you to break out of that cycle the next time a day starts heading in this direction. So, the first issue is the way negativity starts building upon itself in our minds as soon as we start blaming ourselves for the way things are going. A day can end up like this just through bad luck, without you needing to have done anything wrong to cause it. But that isn't the way people usually think about it. The human brain is a bit of a sneaky one, and it likes to engage in subconscious self-sabotage by coming up with a truly diabolical kind of pitch to explain the situation. Hi, it's your brain here. Have you been having a bad day? Lacking energy? Can't focus on the simplest things? Well, it could be because you're a lazy, worthless person. That's right. You might have thought these things were just bad luck, but actually it's all your own fault. Because just as you've always suspected, you're actually the only person this ever happens to. That's why you should try self-hatred. Yeah, punishing yourself like this is why so many bad days just keep getting worse. And it's completely pointless, because being so mentally hostile towards yourself when you have this kind of day doesn't stop it from happening again. It does the opposite and just makes you waste even more time. I've found that the best way to stop this kind of thinking is to kind of mentally zoom right out and think of things from the perspective of an entire lifetime, or even of the universe as a whole. On this kind of scale, the events of one day will seem far too insignificant to be worth treating yourself so badly over. Putting things into perspective like this should disperse enough of your internal resistance that you can make a good decision on what to do next. And exactly what that decision is will depend heavily on what time of day it is. If you've been awake for over 12 hours, then you're not going to be turning this into the greatest day ever. There just isn't time left for that. A sleep-deprived brain can't come up with great ideas no matter how much you want it to, and trying to make up for lost time now just makes the problem worse by ruining tomorrow as well. In this situation, your best option is to use the time you do have left to set yourself up for the next day. In fact, you should adopt the perspective that tonight is part of tomorrow. You know how they say tomorrow is a new start? Well, in this case, that new start is happening right now. Making that happen means mentally casting aside the day so far, because if you don't, then all of the incomplete tasks that you thought you were supposed to do today will stay on your mind and consume your attention, which prevents you from switching off and rejuvenating properly for the next day. The way to free your mind from having to think about incomplete tasks is by coming up with a good plan for how you'll do those things tomorrow and reminding yourself that you'll be far better at doing them once you've had some good rest. To make sure you actually do wake up with enough energy to stick to your plan, prioritize getting some really great sleep by doing things like making your bedroom as dark as possible, lowering the temperature by a few degrees, and getting rid of any devices that contain sleep-wrecking blue LEDs as early as possible. Next, here's what to do if you're still in the first part of the day. If you're still feeling wakeful, then you can still do stuff, but it's not a good idea to keep doing the things you've been doing so far. After all, that hasn't been working, so it probably won't randomly start working now. Instead, you want to do something different, something that will make it possible to do more things afterwards. In his book, Spark, Dr. John J. Ratey explains that this uncomfortable feeling of not wanting to do anything has a biological cause. The reward centers of our brains are not responding in the right way. The reward center is a cluster of dopamine neurons called the nucleus accumbens, and it needs to be sufficiently activated before it will tell the rest of your brain to do something. When the thing you're trying to do doesn't feel like it will be rewarding, even though you know that it is, it's because the two neurotransmitters involved in focusing our attention, dopamine and norepinephrine, aren't being released in sufficient quantities. We can fix this by being physically active, which causes the release of these neurotransmitters, so that afterwards, you'll be able to look at something that seemed difficult and think, yeah, this might actually be kind of okay. I might actually enjoy this. Over time, regular exercise will also increase your baseline levels of these neurotransmitters by increasing the receptors for them in certain parts of your brain, meaning that the whole issue of having difficult days will happen less often in the future. You might be worried that taking the time for physical activity after an already slow start to the day means you're going to get even less done. But that's not true, because a productive day doesn't have to be a long slog. It can instead just be a day that includes a good short burst of focused, meaningful activity. The book Deep Work explains this idea by citing the research of Anders Ericsson, who created deliberate practice theory. Deliberate practice means taking a systematic approach to getting better at something, with the classic example being something like practicing a musical instrument. But the principles that apply here apply to all cognitively demanding work. Ericsson found that about an hour a day of intense concentration appears to be the limit when you're new to something, and this only expands to about 4 hours a day, even when you're an absolute expert. This means that most of the value you can get out of a day can take place in a very short period of time, and by getting a slow start to a day, you haven't missed out on anywhere near as much as you think. As long as you can still get in that 1 or 2 hours where you're really focused on something, you can still achieve pretty much the same results and feel that you've done something meaningful. And I would say you've done something meaningful right now by reaching the end of this video. If you liked it, then you can click like to help more people see it. If you like videos like this in general, then you can subscribe if you haven't already to see more like it in the future. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.